Hello and welcome once again to the So Weird podcast. I'm Zach.
I'm Kathy.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Melissa.
And tonight we are very excited to have a special guest on the show. She's worked as a writer and producer for film and television for over 40 years. Some of her most notable credits include Moonlighting, Rugrats, The Outer Limits, and the beloved Halloween Town films. The listeners of this podcast will, of course, most recognize her for the Disney Channel series So Weird, which she executive produced, in which she wrote fan favorite episodes like Banshee and Lost. We are extremely pleased to welcome Marie Matheson to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
I am happy to be here and to meet everybody. As long as nobody mentions those damn Jetsons again, we're going to be A-okay.
All right, I'll remove the 6 Jetsons related questions I have in my questions here. That's a joke.
I don't recall and I don't know.
Though my first question, before we go any further, Allie, I have to say I am a huge fan of your dad. For any listeners who don't know, Allie Marie's father was the legendary Richard Matheson, who wrote I Am Legend and many wonderful episodes of The Twilight Zone, fantastic Roger Corman, Vincent Price movies in the 60s, and so much other wonderful stuff. I, in fact, have a signed first edition of The Shrinking Man over here on my...
Really? That's very cool. I'm not even sure if I have that.
Well, it's falling apart. I keep it in a air sealed bag because if you touch it, it like starts to crumble, but it's very cool nevertheless. So, and actually my first question, obviously, like I said, your dad was a very successful writer and screenwriter, and your brother is also a successful writer.
Which one?
Well, I'm talking about Richard Christian, though I guess your other brothers are as well, but...
Right, Chris did Bill and Ted, my other brother.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I love the Bill and Ted movies. I'm just getting schooled tonight already.
We're a veritable dynasty.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, you really are. So, I mean, was getting into writing just part of the family tradition for you?
Well, sort of yes, sort of no. I had originally at age 7 planned to be a cowgirl, but that particular career did not pan out as well as I had hoped. So after that, when I went to college and I was interested in music, so I was a professional singer for a while before I moved into writing. But that being said, it was obviously a career and an environment that was very fruitful and very prevalent in my family. From the very get-go, we were going to sets with my dad. We saw writers, they came to our house, or we went to their house, people from Twilight Zone, people from Star Trek, people from my dad's movies. Vincent Price was a friend of my dad's. Rod Serling was a friend. So many interesting people would come through our lives who were of the creative ilk, that really was ultimately the direction that I think pretty much all of us went to.
Do you have any like particular stories that come to mind from those set visits, or just anything that you'd like to share?
Oh, it's funny. I don't think on them as unusual, but I guess people do. If you sit in Boris Karloff's lap and, play with the cat that was in one of the black cat that was in one of my dad's movies, and, wandered around and saw the various sets, met Steven Spielberg when I was like 13 or 14 when they were doing Duel
Right.
in California. And my mother said, "Oh, I should meet that nice young man." That was that was good. I ended up doing Amazing Stories with him, ironically, 20 years later or something like that. So, it's a small world. The entertainment can be a small world.
Yeah, and for anybody who doesn't know, Duel was Spielberg's very first movie. So that was right before he became Steven Spielberg as we know him. So that's pretty cool.
My dad's story was originally on Playboy magazine, and I think that Spielberg did a brilliant job on it. That's a great movie. And just, you'll have to excuse me, but, stories about Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, I love all those guys. So that's amazing to me. They were great. It was a very interesting and neato time to be little and be in that sort of environment.
Wow.
So I think the bottom line was that environment seemed normal to me. I guess if you grow up with a family of accountants, that seems normal, but I know that my algebra teacher would have had a heart attack if I'd ever become an accountant. In math.
So the next question, kind of segueing into how you became involved with the Disney Channel and with So Weird.
Well, I think interestingly enough, I listened to John, my ex-husband. I listened to his iPod, and I think he sort of gave a background on that too. We worked on Rugrats. We had done a spec script, and Rugrats, Eric Casimiro had us in to interview, and we thought we were just going in for some doing, one or two episodes, and things moved very quickly. The writers who were the story editors ended up going into the movie, and all of a sudden, within it seemed like weeks, suddenly we were the story editors and running the show. And from that, we became more visible because we were nominated for an Emmy for a Rugrats special we had done. And at the Emmys, I believe I was sitting next to somebody from Disney, but as you become more visible, you meet more people. And we met some people who liked what we were doing and talked to us about So Weird and showed us the pilot. I still vividly remember seeing the pilot because I was watching it alone in my house. And that one moment where the little boy turns and looks at her, I'm like, whoa, that's freaking me out. So that really caught my notice that there was some interesting things happening in that show. And I thought that the actors in it were just top notch from the very beginning. So we ended up working for Disney. We ended up having an overall deal with them, and they ended up sending us to Vancouver, which we hadn't expected to happen. We thought we were just going to do it from a distance, but ironically, even though you can do that nowadays, you couldn't really do that like 20 odd years ago. The technology was not in the place to do that. And you had to be on set anyway, because we had minors, et cetera, and we kind of needed to take care of things on set. So off we went.
Wow.
Wow.
It's funny you mentioned the little boy and family reunion and him and popping out of the screen. I remember that from my first time watching that episode, or that's one of the moments that stood out for me as well. I guess our next question, I noticed you commented on one of our podcast live streams that you had rewatched So Weird on, I'm guessing on Disney Plus. So I was wondering what your impressions of the show were when we rewatching for the first time in many years.
And many years. That's an interesting question, because I was a different person then. And what I felt, what were my passions, interests, etc., were different because I had a young child and was married to someone else and was living in a new area for the first time. There were a lot of things going on that I think John and I pursued and were interested in terms of So Weird. For example, when you look at Fountain, which is still one of my favorite episodes, Fountain is about, and I love the fact that she's cognizant of her own current age, no matter how far back she goes. But that was something as I grow older that I'm aware of too, that you look back on your past and think, oh, well, what would I have done if I had been as I know today, but I was younger? Would I have done something different? Would I have been something different? How would I have seen my family, etc.? And I liked very much that was there. I liked Nightmare and Banshee. And I was also able to look at Mac McKenzie differently in her relationship with kids, because now my daughter's grown and she's in grad school, even though she was little, very little when we did So Weird. And just looking at the changes that you have as a mother, and also primarily because I've lost my parents now. And now I look at Banshee differently because I understand the loss and the sadness that can go around that I wasn't as completely cognizant of then, because of course my parents were still alive and I was younger. But it's kind of amazing to see that it's still there, that we still got it.
That's really interesting, because that's something a lot of fans have commented on as well, is that their perspective on the show has changed over the years. And it's a show that we've all said that different age groups can enjoy and appreciate for different reasons. So it's interesting that you picked up on that as well, rewatching.
Well, John Cooksey and I were never, it was funny, I was talking to my agent today and I said, I don't do perky. I've never done perky. So he and I were just pretty darn perk free overall. And if you ever see a perky episode in So Weird, we probably had not too much to do with it. We have always been about for lack of a better way to phrase it, deeper things about home and faith, about family, and ultimately I think love and courage. And these are the motifs that you see in So Weird over and over again. And you take it vicariously through Fee at times, but she takes us on our journey. But these are the things that we cared about. I know that from what I've heard, the final season on So Weird, they did it where they kept returning to status quo at the end. And to me, to be honest, that's what you do in sitcoms. We ran a sitcom in production, and the whole goal of a sitcom is that nobody really changes. It's like they change, but they don't. And you kind of go back to where you were, and it's nothing too terribly intense. But we had a great journey was So Weird, and we had a journey that we intended to finish at the end. And I think for both of us that was difficult, because our stories and where we were going that we pursued, we were headed somewhere. And I know it was hard for both of us to lose that, and to lose that specialness.
That was going to be another question I was going to ask about, since you mentioned that the arc that you had planned was not completed. Were there any particular ideas that didn't come to fruition that you, regret not being able to fulfill from that?
I think so. I would have liked Fee to ultimately truly connect with her father. Anybody who's read My Father knows that life after death for him has always been such a big topic. What Dreams May Come is a perfect representation of that he very much believed that. And we caught a bit of it in Strange Geometry, but I would have liked to have taken her further. I know we want to take it further with her, with the family, with the story about the father, with how Fee fit in. We definitely, whenever John and I did shows, I don't think we had too many arcs on Rugrats, but normally we have arcs and places we wanted our characters to go and grow, to grow as human beings do.
What do you think the characters would be up to in the present day?
What would they be up to in the present day? That's interesting. I would like to think that Jack and Fee would have gone on to college and not lived in the bus forever with their mother. That would not be so good. I think that Fee would have turned out to be an amazing individual who would have had such a continual curiosity and fascination about the world and pursuing it. And I think Molly would have worked through her uncertainty and losses and even the addiction and found somebody that she could have a really loving relationship with as her children grew older and moved on. I don't think we ever would have done that. We wouldn't have done 10 years of So Weird, but that's ultimately what I like to think happened.
Yeah.
I heard you ask John a bus question. Don't ask me no bus questions. I saw that John was like, they asked me who made that bus? And I'm like, I have no idea.
There's one
We're
fan that's very
desperate.
insistent. They're like, what happened to that bus? And I'm like, I don't know if anyone really knows that, but maybe.
It drove. I still remember vividly the very beginning where they're driving in the credits. We shot that on Mount Seymour at like 3 a.m. I remember that vividly. And I was thinking, oh, please God, let them not go over the side of this cliff. Jesus, it's like 30 below. It just always amazes me, because when you look at a series that you helped run, it's like all the memories behind it crowd in next to what you actually see. Like, what is the heck of the name of the Halloween episode? I can't even think of the name of it.
Boo.
Yeah. I mean, we were there. I feel like we did French hours on that. We were just there till I still remember being in my trailer at like 3 or 4 a.m, and those zombies would wander in, and they had them some coffee and they'd leave. And I'm like, this is a strange way to make a living.
So you got to meet Henry Winkler.
Oh yeah. We met Henry. Henry and Larry were friends, and we all went out for fancy schmancy sushi when he first came to Vancouver. So yes, we absolutely met him.
So something you had mentioned was how with So Weird you very much had an arc in mind for Fiona and the other characters. And you've worked on other shows that were very serialized in that manner, but you've also worked on anthology series like The Outer Limits or Amazing Stories, where every episode is a self-contained story. How do those two styles compare to each other?
Well, I think, for example, with My Amazing Stories was based on a short story I wrote that sold to the magazine. And then Amazing Stories ended up buying it because they liked it. And if anybody can find it online, it's really a very well done episode. Ken Kwapis directed it, and Kathy Baker starred in it. It's just really, really well done. But there is an arc in the story. There's a beginning where she's headed out and she's upset and she's driving and she's not going to deal with all of the things that are happening in her life, but her life comes after her in cars. And they're trying to give her a message that she needs to take. That's all I'm going to tell you, because you have to find this episode. It's very cool. So, obviously there's a 360 in that.
So you don't really approach it any differently. It's just, instead of it being an arc that's spread out over multiple episodes, it's just an arc within the half an hour or however long.
It's all inclusive within that particular drama, whatever time that I have. And I think John and I, one of the things we often did was we were sort of interested in arcs. So a lot of the things that we did, even in half an hour shows, we did a show which will probably be infamous forever, called Big Brother Jake, that we worked on, which was a sitcom where we were producers. And even in sitcoms where ostensibly nothing changes, we had it where one of the characters hadn't dealt with his family, hadn't dealt with his parents and his inability to talk to them and deal with them, and they came to visit and he had to go there. So there was absolutely an arc and a change. If the characters don't change at all, I'm not sure what you got there. They don't have to change instantly, but if you have my brother, I remember vividly when I was first starting out, my brother Richard said to me, well, what you need to do is you need to run your character up a tree, throw rocks at them until they figure out who's throwing the rocks and how to avoid the rocks, and then they can get down off the tree. I'm like, what? Oh, okay.
No, that's great advice.
Yeah, well, it's a little cryptic, but I liked it.
The next question. So in our interview with John Cooksey, and you mentioned this before, we asked him what his depiction of hell would look like for So Weird, since that's where the original storyline was.
I'm sorry, his depiction of what?
Of hell. So where he was traveling to hell to save Rick in that original season 3 storyline.
What is his depiction of hell?
So he answers saying that he compares it to images and ideas from the novel What Dreams May Come by your father, Richard, and which he calls the most beautiful and romantic novel of all time.
Did he really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's nice. He never told me that. My father was, if anybody is familiar with my father material, and something like Zach is, my father was always about, well, to put it bluntly, we make our own hell or we make our own heaven. And hell is really, for my father, would be an environment. And interestingly enough, in What Dreams May Come, the hell that is created in that, because my mother was such a lover of lights and gardens and animals and beauty, that the hell in that book is she is living in this horrible, dark, dank place. But she doesn't know it. She can't, her depression is such that she can't get out. And I thought that was really fascinating. So I don't know that I would look at hell cartoonish level notwithstanding. I wouldn't look at it as fire and brimstone. To me, it would be trapped in a negative place for an indefinite amount of time. That's pretty hellacious.
Wow.
Right.
And the fact that my dad wrote that book and worked to rescue her from hell. And then, I don't know how many of you read the book, but he can't do it. And he says that I'll stay here with you. I'll stay with you in hell. You won't be here alone. And that changes everything. He's willing to accept where she's at just to be with her. It's an amazing book.
I have to read it someday now.
It's also got more than a few autobiographical things, as my father is wont to do. He uses his name and my mom's name. all the time.
Mm.
But I'm Marie in that book. I'm a bit perky in that book, though. That's annoying. But other than that,
All right. Switching gears here a little bit. An episode that fans like to talk about a lot is Twin, because Twin, we know, was reshot and the ending was rewritten. And I guess I was wondering if you were involved in the rewriting process for Twin.
you're going to think this is very obtuse of me, but please remind me which one is Twin.
Twin is the episode, the end of season 2, where Fee meets her dad on the rooftop.
Oh my, I remember that. That was a bitch to shoot. Holy moly.
Yeah, tell us
you've
about it.
got a minor kid on the top of a rooftop, and it's like you're seeing your life pass before your eyes. There were times when I was more actively on set than I was involved with rewrite, and that my memory of Twin is being on the set with that and praying to God nobody fell off the roof. To be 100% honest, I remember we had to go through windows and up this and up that to be on the top of a roof, and it was nerve-wracking. So that part was nerve-wracking, but I'm sure John Cooksey would know more about the rewrite on that one.
Yeah, he told us about it. I was just wondering if you were involved too.
No, I was just trying to keep people from killing themselves. That's all.
And by the way, when Kathy was in Vancouver, she found the hotel where that scene was shot, didn't you?
Right, yeah, Hotel Vancouver. So right in the downtown.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's an amazing hotel. It's absolutely beautiful.
yeah. We actually have pictures of like behind the scenes of that shoot, and I always imagine being someone in one of the buildings across the street, watching and seeing people like fly off of the building. And I'm like, wow, I would not want to be that person.
I'm personally just amazed we got that done. There are just a few shows that I recall that just were nerve-wracking, and that was one of them. Very nerve-wracking.
Okay, so I saw on your IMDb back in like the late 90s, you wrote for a couple of the video games, the Rugrats video games. I was wondering if the process for writing for video games is much different from writing for TV or film.
Yeah, it is, because you're dealing with people who run the video games and have completely different priorities. They're not so interested in arc as much as you get the visuals down that they need and the things that they want. And it's not about, character, what's his character arc when he goes from A to B. It's a matter of making sure that your visuals and the machinations of the visuals are right on target. So we don't have to have touchy-feely moments of the characters and, deep, meaningful lines as much as you need to make sure that you get that video game right. It certainly left me with the feeling that I would not want to do video games for a career.
Mm.
Yeah, I kind of figured, since those were your only 2 credits there.
Yeah, well, I didn't do that and go, say, this is fun. However, we did do Rugrats on Broadway. We had a blast. That was awesome.
Really?
Okay, yeah, you got to talk about that.
Yes,
That was
please.
cool. That was really cool. Actually, excuse me. We were in Connecticut for a while, and then we were at Radio City Music Hall. And I still remember at like 1 a.m. that we were blocking, and my parents had come to visit. And I took my mom up on the stage. I said, Mom, I don't think, since neither of us are going to be Rockettes, that we'll ever have a chance to be on this stage again. So lo and behold, we got on the stage and did our little, 2-step just to say we'd been there. But it was just an amazing, mysterious place when nobody was there. So beautiful.
So cool.
Yeah,
That's
it was.
amazing.
That was a lot of fun.
Well, and something we've already talked about a lot is how you've written for animation and other times. You laughed when I mentioned the Jetsons. Well, I'm also going to mention Mask and the Totally Demented Adventures of Ed Grimley, or whatever it was called.
Oh God, I need aspirin. Yeah, well, the ironic part about animation, at least to me, was that I think the average layman would think it was just a very halcyon environment, that everybody was, puppies and kittens. But darned, there's some dysfunctional people running animation, is all I can say. That was just some crazy ass times. It really was. Excuse my French.
I mean, how did your experience working on animation compare to writing for television, live action stuff? I mean,
Uh, well, you're one step removed because you write the script and then there's animatics done which show you what it's going to look like visually. But then it goes on and you see the voice actors, which is a hoot because you get there early in the morning. And of course, if you listen to Rugrats, they're very cute and adorable. They have their little baby voices like that, but they're women of 40s, and they'd come in and they'd have their coffee and their cigarettes and they'd be discussing their boyfriends and their kids and whatever. And then they go into the audio room and they'd be like this. And I found that was true across the board just because of the hours and the difficulties with working with minors, that I would guess almost all animation shows are working with adult actors that can do kid voices. But for example, when I first started out, because I was just doing spec, I can't believe I'd forgotten I'd done the Jetsons. I think that was the first thing I ever did.
The internet never forgets anything.
I know. I really wish you would forget it if you possibly could. In terms of the adventures with Martin Short, that was pretty insane because he brought around all his SCTV friends.
Oh, that's cool.
That was one of the last gigs I think that Hanna-Barbera even did. Johanna and Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera, they were like direly geriatric, and they kind of lived on the very top of that building, and if you were summoned to them, you genuflected and backed up carefully when you were around them because they'd been around forever. And my office was downstairs with, I would swear it was just like these guys would be doing these tapes, but I'd keep hearing them all the time, so I'd be trying to write a script and hear this bing, bing, bang, bing, I was like, oh, this has got to be water torture somewhere. So it was interesting working at Hanna-Barbera. I think I was one of the last to do so.
I mean, and obviously Rugrats was a show you had a lot more involvement and control over compared to those early credits.
You always have only so much control, no more. Even as an exec producer, there's always there's always cooks in the soup. And sometimes the cooks offer good seasoning, and other times it's like, oh my God, that's going to make something unpalatable, can I tell you? So.
And that's just universal across the entire cinematic entertainment industry.
Forever and ever and ever. I saw the same thing happen with my dad, and my dad used his other name, Logan Swanson, when he absolutely hated something. So if you ever see anything with Logan Swanson on it, that's my dad, and he hated it. So. I think he used that with the Charlton Heston I Am Legend, which was just a car accident.
None of the I Am Legend movies are as good as the book, but I kind of like that one, to be totally honest.
Oh, well, that's it. That's it for you.
Oh, no.
Between that and the Jetsons, you and I, we can no longer talk.
Going on to the next question, do you remember receiving the news of Disney wanting to change up So Weird for season 3? And what was that like?
It's always upsetting in a way, because in a way it's your swan song. You either do what they want, and then everything you've done before is rendered almost moot in a way, or I think they want you to render it moot. Or if you do it, it's almost like you're selling the characters. You're selling their journey away. And we left because, like I said, we don't do, we can be, John and I were always funny, and certainly we could do things that were comedic and or sitcom-y, but we were never insipid. And I just think they took the show in a direction that we never would have. And when they say we want to do this, again, it's, when it's our way or the highway, you have to make your call. And that happens. It absolutely happens. And I get it. In a rhetorical sense, I get it. I get that Disney didn't want to have something that had that kind of an intensity and depth. That's not what they were looking for. The storylines that we pursued were intense, and that's not what ultimately I think they wanted from the show. But I personally think, and clearly from the fans too, it's like it was quite jarring to go from our journey to all of a sudden, boing, how happy everybody is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think Disney thinks that children or kids, or especially that age, like preteen, couldn't handle these storylines. But as we see now, we definitely weren't interested in it.
Right. Well,
and-
I think the operative word is 20 years later. This was 20 years ago when Disney perhaps was finding its own feet.
right.
And this was before things like Netflix, et cetera, had become predominant, and storylines that were dark and intense had come to fruition. Disney, I think, was on its own journey. But I'm grateful that we had 2 seasons to do that. I'm still friends with Belinda, and I'm still friends with Mac. I stay in touch with you. You had a journey together. It's funny, but that's really what it is. When you do a series, because you're together all the time, I mean, certainly there's some people that you come where, you can't get away from them quick enough. But for the most part, it's an amazing journey to take together.
Right. Yeah.
We love hearing that, different cast members and people involved with the show are still in touch with each other. That's so cool. And a question that I ask everyone we interview is, have you ever experienced anything paranormal? And if not, what's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you?
Well, considering my background of my father, who was often in pursuit of the paranormal in one way or another, I think the most, and I use it quotation mark, paranormal, was the psychic that I spoke to after my father passed away, because until he had passed away, there was a part of me that just simply didn't go there for whatever reason, maybe because my father went there, who knows. But I talked to a psychic, and she didn't know me. And even if you looked up my father, there are always going to be things they won't know. And so I thought I would just ask her some questions. And I said to her, what did he think of the memorial picture we used? And again, there's no way this woman could get a hold of the memorial picture we used for my dad. And he said, nice, but no hat. And my dad always wore a hat. And I thought, okay, I'll try this one more time. And I said, so what does he think about what I framed in my office? And she said, he thinks it's funny. He doesn't know why they gave it now. And it was the city of Los Angeles saying my dad was commemorated as the best citizen of blah, yada, 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 yada. And just those 2 questions and her response really started turning me around to the point where I'm almost at 360 in terms of what I believe about life after death. It's really started me on a journey starting there. And is it paranormal? I don't know, but it wasn't who I was when I started the journey. But because that opened it up to a lot of reading and research, because that's what I do. I'm somewhat empirical that way, as my dad did too. He had all these books he left behind. And interestingly enough, I think I've come to believe what my father believed. Now, it would be lovely, of course, if when our parents pass away, they would drop a burning bush in our front yard and say, here I am, everything's good, we're fine. But I don't think it's supposed to be that easy. But it's a matter of faith. For me, it's a matter of diligence, but it's also a matter of faith and repetition, that the people say the same thing over and over and over again about what they see and experience. So I believe my parents are together, actually. And that's a journey for me, and it's a comfort too. Now, that being said, I don't do ghosts. I don't like ghosts. Ironically, I have a friend of mine who writes ghost stories, and he's going to Gettysburg to go dig up some Civil War ghosts. And he knows I like the Civil War. I'm aficionado about battles. And he said, do you want to go? And I'm like, no, because I don't want to see ghosties. I'm out on ghosties.
That's so crazy. I was just in Gettysburg like 2 weeks ago.
That place is laden with them. Oh my gosh.
That's what everybody who lives there tells you.
Yeah, they're all over the dang place. I read about this woman who went down to her basement to get some stuff that she had, jams that she did, and she looked over and there were like soldiers marching past her. I'm like, oh hell no. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
So I it's interesting. My dad said, he said that he never liked it when people said that he was a horror writer. He said, I'm not a horror writer. I don't do horror. I do all kinds of different things, but not that dark, creepy, scary stuff. So I can't either.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question actually comes from one of our co-hosts that couldn't be here tonight, named Kat. She asks, which character resonates with you the most?
I think Molly does, because Molly was always working to deal with her uncertainties, her difficulties with her father, the loss of her husband, her addictions, the uncertainty about her music and her creativity, her loving her children, but not always knowing how to deal with them. As a mother and a fellow creative individual, yeah, absolutely, Molly. I mean, I talk to Mac now, and we same thing. It's still a matter of we connected right off on the set because we both had kids and we were both working in a creative situation. And yeah, I mean, Fee is wonderful, but she was 13 or whatever, and I have to say I was not like that at 13.
She's who I wanted to be when I was 13.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be pretty cool to be running around on a bus and examining stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of viewers really wanted to be Fee when they grew up. So a project you worked on around the same time
Uh-oh.
doing
Now you're
So
making
Weird.
me nervous.
No, I swear. Well, it was also for Disney Channel. I mentioned it in the intro, which is the first two Halloween Town movies.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how those came about, and if any those movies kind of share some of the same energy as So Weird, and if any of the ideas for one influence the other, or vice versa.
Well, it's funny because when you write things, unless you really are coming from a very predominant position, you never know that you're going to write something that will really resonate with the masses. And Halloween Town, it's like I'm some sort of hero when people hear that I worked on that. I have to push my mind back to remember, but I know there was somebody, Paul somebody, can't think of his last name. There was a pitch we'd all put in, and then we ended up doing the script, and it was a lot of fun to shoot. I met Debbie Reynolds, and it was a very enjoyable shoot, and I thought they did a really good job. And because it was so popular, I mean, my gosh, they show it every Halloween, and they have a fan club that they all get together and dress up and do all this, hoo-ha. And so we ended up doing Halloween 2, but we did not end up doing Halloween 3. It was a really fun, cute idea.
Okay. On the topic of So Weird, one of the episodes that you're credited with writing is Encore, which was the clip show. And I'm curious about the particular challenges of writing for an episode specifically designed to use like 90% pre-existing footage.
Well, a clip show in a way is very often an expedient way to do that and use, as you mentioned, pre-existent footage. If anything, it's more of the wheelhouse of the editor, who needs to put it together in a very smooth and linear fashion. And we kind of, we almost write links that go with it. Of course, you have to figure out what's going to fit with what. But anytime you do see that kind of, oh, here's our retrospective, and shows do it very often. It really is, it's just for one reason or another, that was what needed to be done at that particular time.
Does the decision to do those kind of cheaper, maybe you could call them filler episodes like that, does that usually come down from the network?
Word is cheaper.
Yeah. Does that usually come down from the network, or is that something that originates in the writer's room?
Well, no, it doesn't originate. Fiscally, nothing really originates in the writer's room. Fiscally, originate from the producers. If perhaps, just for an example, if you wanted to do something more expensive or wanted to have more effects of whatever kind, but you had only X amount of budget, it's like anything else. It's like, okay, well, we will do this and this will be more fiscally helpful and we won't be spending as much on this particular episode. So perhaps we can move some money over and spend it on this episode instead.
Okay, so like at the beginning of the season, do you guys get a note that says, you have to write 24 episodes and one of them has to be a clip show?
I don't remember anything being that obvious.
Okay.
I think what you start a series and you start a season with grand plans in mind, but things always happen. They always do. Things get, the weather goes, especially in Vancouver, the weather would go bad or somebody will get sick or you lose something or the writing doesn't work out or we get delayed or whatever. So you have to kind of work with what you have, because whatever, it's like anything else. It's like what you think it's going to be, you think it's going to be smooth sailing, but there are always things that you have to deal with. There's always things that come up.
All right. Well, that's fascinating to hear, because as somebody who is a writer himself and a big fan of all media, I've always had this image of the television writers' room, people sitting around the table throwing ideas around. And I've always
No, we're throwing things, but it's not usually
and there's always this sense of the creative people have the vision and the network is the one that's suppressing their creativity. And I never know how much of that is true and how much of that is just complete bunk.
Well, it's not black and white, but it's my experience after my many years, the Jetsons notwithstanding, that was premiere. But my experience has been that always you start with a vision as a writer. You want to have this happen or that happen, or you want to have this happen over an episode or an arc of time. And things can get in the way or stymie you, or it can't happen for whatever reason. And there are a myriad of reasons. There are especially a myriad of reasons, with minors, or the crazy episode we did where she was a dog. Oh my God. It was just, excuse my French, a bitch. I mean, thank God we didn't do a cat, or we'd still be sitting here trying to shoot it. But
is that why they didn't have a cat?
well, listen, I have 3 cats. You just no. They're very tricky. But even it's like just that, trying to all standing around waiting for the dog to do what he's supposed to do. And you will notice, I believe that's the only episode we ever did with a dog.
Well, that's the old axiom, right? Never work with kids or animals.
So W.C. Fields said, yes, and he was right. We worked with kids. Obviously, we worked with minors. And remember that minors have X amount of hours, very stringent, and then they have to go to school and they have their guardian and blah, 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 blah. So it's just, the best laid plans of mice and men, they get altered because that's the nature of the beast. That's how it happens. But sometimes, for example, when you think of Jaws, the reason you don't see the shark very much is because it never worked.
Right.
So, we would certainly cheat. My dad did that all the time. And then we learned to do that too. You just cheat things. What you don't see is scarier than what you can see often.
And more often than not, it works out, sometimes.
Yeah, I still remember, you didn't even bring it up. One of my very other credits besides Jetsons was Fame. And I still remember vividly, it was one of my first hour things, and I watched it, and they had changed almost every word, and I was shocked, absolutely shocked. And now I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, well, I got the money and I did my best, and there you go. Such as it is.
As at a certain point, you just have to let go of it. It's no longer yours.
Well, that's exactly it. In fact, right now I'm working on selling a project to animation companies, and I create what I can. And then, there's such a thing as the young hot writers, the whatever, lexicon that is. I'm sure John and I were once upon a time the young hot writers. And I've watched that happen. And you must change with the times. And it's like, okay, well, they're going to put this in and that in on the zeitgeist, et cetera. And it's like, okay, well, we'll see how that goes. Flexibility is everything. You have to be, so you can't say, oh my God, my words are sacrosanct. Everyone must speak my exact words because they are so damn sacrosanct. Well,
Well, and very, you'll notice that very few writers in Hollywood have the option of even thinking that way, unless you're Patty Tchaikovsky or something,
right. And not only that, but there's always so many writers who are so darn good that we want to hear every bloody word. But we had an actress who shall remain nameless that worked on a show, and she couldn't memorize anything, but she was related to somebody of higher ilk. And so we had to work with this person who we had to come up with words she could memorize. Probably like and, but, sure, no, yes. But we had to work with what she could do.
Wow.
So that happens. It all happens. I think that's the one thing I've learned is it just all happens and you just roll with the punches. Because if you don't, it's going to roll over you. So there you go. I'm so deep, very deep.
This is Kat's second question. She asks, what was your favorite storyline to write?
What was my favorite storyline to write? I think, as I mentioned, I really liked Fountain best because I love the ending. I absolutely love the ending that Christmas and your family and togetherness doesn't have to be in one spot or another spot, that it can be wherever the people we love are. And I just really, really like that. I'm a softie in that respect. So, I miss that myself. My parents are gone now and my siblings are scattered and I miss that. I miss that you have those moments. So I think sometimes older writers recreate what they don't have anymore, what they missed. So
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite episodes too. I actually got the script on eBay and it's a prized possession.
yeah, I still remember shooting it in that mall. And the funny thing is you can't know once in a blue moon if John and I said, boy, this is brilliant. Everything we're doing is brilliant. Well, it didn't always turn out that way. But the ones that sneak up on you, that you can't, what you want out of it, but you can't quite tell how it's going to turn out. And I just thought that Fountain turned out lovely. I really liked it a lot.
Yeah, it's truly like a gift to the fandom. I feel like watching that episode. It's like every Christmas I can watch this episode and it ends on such a happy, joyful note. It's like, I don't know, drinking something really warm. It just makes you feel really good watching it.
Yeah, I think John and I'm sure I'm not telling tales out of school, but John and I brought, of course, our lives into it. And he was a child of divorce. So Nightmare was something that I think he related to that episode of parents that are having difficulties, that are having conflict, and how it impacts the young boy, as it impacted him. Right. It's just a heck of a lot easier to write what you know. It's like my agent today, he and I met for coffee, and he said, well, there's a big market for thrillers. And I said, well, that's good. I can't write thrillers. I did write one thriller. Zach, you missed that one. But that was, I think John Cooksey did all the writing because I could not figure the bloody thing out. I just can't come up with thrillers. It's just not my thing. So I think ideally, as a writer, you find out what you do best. And we were certainly eclectic. We covered a lot of venues. But again, I recently wrote a movie that is, a time travel rom-com because that's what I like to do.
And you're just gonna force us to figure out what that thriller was on our own.
No, you can dig it up. It was like we did do thrillers. We did one or two of them. This one was shot. I vividly remember it because A, it was a thriller, and B, I'd recently broken my ankle. So I was being taken to set, and there'd been like a huge snowstorm. So I was tromping around, and I'm thinking, this is not my favorite experience as a writer. I am not enjoying this at all.
Oh, was this Before I Say Goodbye with Sean Young?
No? That might have been it.
Okay.
I'm still trying to know where you found the goddamn Jetsons.
IMDb has everything.
No, I don't want them to have
that. It has Growing Pains and the Police Academy cartoon.
Oh yeah.
And all of this stuff.
Oh, this is terrible. Listen, you got to reserve the right to stink, and those are not my finest hours. So.
Well, there's another member of our So Weird podcast family who runs our social media. Her name's Betsy, and she want to ask you a couple questions about Brie Crew. If that he possesses the Jack and Molly's body.
Oh yeah. That's funny, actually. Very witty. I like that
Mhm.
one.
Yeah, and that's another one of my favorites. She wanted to know if you knew who voiced Brie Crew when he was in his Will the Wisp form, so he wasn't Patrick or Mackenzie. Do
That's
you
a
know?
very good question. This is on par with the bus question. I have no darn idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
I apologize, but I have no idea.
There are some things maybe we're just not meant to know. So
Is it not possible that one of them did it and it was sped up or altered somehow?
I don't know.
Because to hire another person to do a voiceover is expensive.
Yeah, it may have even been two people because I felt like the guy that did it in season 3 for the first episode.
Well, Molly,
Yeah,
if anybody could have done it, it would have been what the heck is his name? Oh my God. He was in the band. Oh, come on, you guys, you would know.
The guitarist?
What's his name? He's such a hoot. I love him. He was the band, the original band with Molly, her husband, and what was the third guy?
Oh,
Mackenzie Gray.
Yeah, Mackenzie Gray. He's wonderful. He can do anything. He was the best devil. He was fabulous. He
Huh.
could.
You know, we've had him on the show and we didn't think to ask him that question.
Well, I could totally see him doing it, but I don't know. And no, I don't know what the bus is. I don't know the make of the bus either.
Okay. And she also had another a second part to that question. So how was the Will the Wisp portrayed on set for Kara and the others to act with when it was the Will the Wisp form?
Wow. To be honest, I don't think I was on set then.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to guess, especially because I did watch Mackenzie's version, and it really was just a matter of them finding that darker, stranger, weirder part of their personality, which I can assure you they all had. Just because you write them a certain way doesn't mean they don't have a lot of different parts of the personality that are perhaps not explored in the show, but they're absolutely there.
Yeah. I think both of them did a really great job with
Mhm.
acting in those episodes.
Yeah, and I like because Molly sometimes had to be so loving and motherly, and Jack had to be so wholesome and brotherly, and to let them be degenerates once in a while is a good thing. Actors like to push their envelope. They do.
All right. Well, now we are in the portion of the interview where we're going to answer some questions from the fans that have been submitted to us from social media. So if the Jetsons comes up at any point in this round of questions, it's not
I never
on
had
me.
anything to do with the Jetsons. I have no recollection, and I don't talk about them.
All right. This first question comes from Monique Rowe. And actually, this is not a question at all. So I'm just going to read this. And it says, "No wonder So Weird was so well written and created. I didn't even know what questions to ask. I'm so blown away by who ran the show."
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, going on to the next question. So this is from Lauren Lola. She says, Banshee is most definitely a fan favorite among the So Weird fan base.
Yeah, that's so well done.
I was wondering if you can talk a bit about the writing process for that episode. How difficult was it to be writing that tense dynamic between Molly and her father? And Fee has some Irish roots that play a role in the series. Was there much research that went into that Irish lore?
There was always research between John and I. There was always research. If anything required that sort of background, then we would always make sure that it was on the money. I remember the set and how amazing it looked finally, but it was just something we had. The P&E, I don't know, people live in Vancouver, they know what it is. A P&E at that time was just a huge building, and we built all our sets in there. And that was just a wonderful set that we had put together that looked absolutely fantastic when they walked through the hall, etc. And then we had to shoot in the woods for a while. In terms of the familial aspects, I will guess, I won't speak for John Cooksey, although I could in a way, because obviously we were married a long time and I know his relationship with his parents to a certain degree, but certainly issues with fathers is a somewhat ubiquitous issue. You know, I had my issues with my father, he had his issues with his father. We were writing something that wasn't unknown to us, and we understood what it was like to have fathers who perhaps you wanted something from, you couldn't always get. And she reached out to him musically, and I thought that was a beautiful aspect of it. I really like that. And it was a challenging episode to do, but I thought it was beautifully done. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
I guess a similar question was from Masterpiece Lady. They wanted to know where you did most of your research for the Banshee app. So where you did your research? Did you go to Ireland, I guess?
Actually, John and I did go to Ireland,
Mhm.
but not to do a believe me, if I could have thought I could have deducted it, I'm on my way. But no, we had been in Ireland, as a matter of fact. Neither of us are Irish. I am of a Norwegian background and he's of English German background. But we had been to Ireland and were quite taken with a lot of it, which is absolutely, I still have Celtic jewelry and various things that I accrued there. And I know that that was something that had caught our imagination at the time, because when we had talked about Banshee, that was certainly something that had impacted us at the time. But where did we do our research? You know, that's one of the great things about Google nowadays. Let me tell you. Before you had to go to the library, whatever. So a direct place I did the research, I don't remember. You just, you get what you have to get. And then, if you're really a fancy schmancy writer, then you have researchers. But we had no researchers.
So this question comes from Billy the Disney guy. How did you come up?
Billy the Disney guy.
That's what he wants to be called.
And that would be what?
He wants to know how you came up with the story for the episode Lost. That's the one where the little girl is in the coma.
Oh, please don't beat me up, but I don't remember. I was thinking ironically of my dad's story, Lost, Little Girl Lost. That's
Right.
what came to mind.
I think I saw on Wikipedia, it shows how there were writers for this episode, but then I think it said like story play, or the story was by you and John, but there's different writers. So I'm not even sure what the difference between those two are.
Yeah,
I
IMDb
wish
gives you a story
after 20
credit for
odd
that
years
episode.
that I could remember every nuance, every moment. But like anything else in life, you kind of can't. There's things that very much stand out to me, and then some things, because it's every day,
Right.
every single day, and some of it became rote, and some of it was fabulous, and some of it was not, and that's kind of how it worked.
Yeah.
So I can't remember. I apologize, but I cannot remember every episode. I'll bet John Cooksey can. He's so annoying.
Yeah. A lot of these questions, we definitely understand, like it's so hard to remember even last week, like what.
Well,
I
since
did.
then I've done other, like John and I ran Collector. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but we ran the Collector, which was also it's unusual, dark, so weirdy kind of show that we shot overseas, etc. So, it's like when you do enough and you keep doing things, it's like you only remember so much.
Yeah.
I highly recommend the Collector if you can see it. It's a very good show.
I actually been wanting to watch through that. I just don't know where to watch it. I don't think it's streaming anywhere.
It is streaming. I'm trying to remember where. I'll have to find out, but it's an excellent show. We won Best Series in BC for it.
Huh.
The Leo for it. Where is it streaming? I'll have to look it up. I mean, I just discovered So Weird streaming, so
Yeah.
But I'll go ahead to the next question. So this one's from Jenna Ann. And she asks if you remember the backstory for the episode Rebecca. So that was the episode where Molly's
I know that
childhood
episode.
friend.
John did the music on that. That was a beautiful episode.
Mm-hmm.
That was an interesting episode that was really about, I think, emotional changes and friendship and people losing track of each other, etc. It was an interesting episode because it was something kind of ephemeral and mysterious about it, i.e., as Rebecca was, that she had not aged, and that obviously Molly had. I don't know. I just remember that. Yeah, I don't remember all the nuances of every single thing we discussed, but I remember because all of us were of a certain age where we could talk about those things. And actually, I think that's an advantage to having people, over 20 doing shows, because they have history and they do have changes and loss and growth, etc. You may not be the new young hot writer, but you also know what it's like to lose track of friendships and people and what happened to them, etc. So I think that was the genre we were working in.
Okay, the next question is from Kaylin Michelle, and they wanted to know, why is it that only Fee and not Jack experiences the paranormal? Why do you think that is? They thought maybe it was tied into the ring that Molly and Fee have.
Well, that's a good question. And I think ultimately I can only give my answer. And I think if you ask John, he might indeed have a different answer. I think, you're correct that Molly and Fee have that connection and are more attuned to his loss. I mean, I still remember that one line where Fee says, what about dad? What about dad? She's talking to Jack, and Jack says, I miss him too. But that's not where Jack is willing to go. He's emotionally like, I'm going to be the big brother, I'm going to take care of things, but being like, I'm going to grieve dad and I'm going to feel that and I'm going to go after that. He's not as emotionally, I think, in touch with his feelings as Fee is, or as his mom is. So I think that's why the two of them connected up, and why we do have those scenes where the two of them are feeling the loss and the pain of the father.
Mhm.
And also, just on a sheerly linear idea, if everybody is coming from exactly the same place, it's hard to write. You have no conflict.
Right. Mhm.
It's like three people in exactly the same emotional place in a scene. It's like, oh my God. And if they're all in exactly the same place, then they've got nowhere to go either.
And that's what makes, each character special, I think. Like, it makes Jack's small emotional scenes, like at the end of that episode, Medium, when Fee and Molly are kind of crying together, playing Rick's guitar, and we see Jack listening.
Which is a beautiful scene.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, exactly. Jack listening versus coming in and going, oh, I want to be part of this.
Right, right.
That's not how people work. People work like, I feel my feelings, but I'm not ready to expose them, or I'm not in touch with them, or I don't want you to know. He's the only male, Eric Von Deeten notwithstanding, he was he feels the need, he needs to take care of his sister and his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a male strength thing too.
So the next question comes from Kyra Leila on Instagram. She asks if you have any favorite quotes from the series that you can remember.
Favorite quotes? I don't think so. I just have favorite moments. I have favorite visuals.
Yeah.
That's what strikes me, is just remembering, like Strange Geometry, remembering filming that where the people were circling around the outside, and that scene which was so intense of, is she going to see her father, is she going to do this? That was really intense and emotional. And also just being in the mall and her shooting the fountain and all of us, and that was snow outside. Being outside when she was trying to get inside with
Mm-hmm.
fountain, things like that. And it's just, to me, it's almost like a cornucopia of pictures and moments,
Yeah.
things, laughter and hugs and arguments and all that stuff. That to me is my memories of the show.
Wow. So our next question here comes from, I believe that you would pronounce this Gui, Gui. I don't know how to say it. It's from Twitter. And the question is, are there episodes you wrote inspired by events in your life?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's inevitable. That's absolutely inevitable, because like I said, we write what we know. As mentioned, certainly my father was a remote person, and in Banshee, Molly's father is a remote person, and I wrote what I emotionally understood, as did John. which is, I think, why, because both of us have gone through the journey of trying to get in touch with our own feelings over the years.
Mhm.
And to me, if writing if it doesn't resonate from somewhere in a person that we recognize as the audience, then I know for myself, I completely tune out. It's funny, my husband and I, we just turned on Troy last night on Netflix, whatever. And there wasn't one person doing one realistic thing that I could relate to. I couldn't understand what anybody was doing, why they were doing it, who they were. It was just a lot of people running around and jumping on horses and yelling and screaming. And I said, I have no interest in this, zero, because I'm not invested in anybody. I think one of the reasons people love So Weird is because they're invested in the characters. What happens to them? Will they be okay? Where are they going to go? I think that's part of why when you lose a show, when it has to end, it's hard because you, especially as writers, producers, you're emotionally invested, not only in the characters, but in the people themselves, because you get to know them. You're with them every day.
Right. Mhm.
The same person also is interested in knowing if there are any episodes you wish you could rewrite from So Weird.
Maybe medium, because I understand a little bit more about who those people are now after actually talking to some of them and why they do what they do. I think I would not make the medium as two-dimensional,
Mhm.
for example.
I-
I think I would be addressing things that I understand better now, both as somebody of an older age and as a mother of a grown-up child and an older writer. So it would be inevitable that things would be written differently because I'm at a different stage.
Well, and going off of that statement, the same person, their last question is, in the last 22 years since So Weird ended, how do you feel your writing skills have changed in that time?
Well, So Weird made me value, as did my relationship with John Cooksey, very much that a writing journey that was of love and truth and honesty and courage and a true aversion to writing materials, unless you're utterly broke, of course, that is just fatuous or a lie, etc. It's like we only get, well, ostensibly we only get one, swing at bat here. So to me, some of the things I'm proudest of are things where a truth has been spoken that people can understand, that they can say, okay, this character, like, even in the Rugrats, where Chucky finally comes to deal with the fact that his mother is gone because his father couldn't deal with it because it was too emotionally upsetting. And I still remember the line where he says, well, I don't know if I can do this. I'll miss her too much. And she says, well, that's okay. Then you can miss her together. And it's just that simple little step of growth. And I thought there was a lot of emotional growth and So Weird that I was very touched by. And I'm not always able to emulate that or hired to emulate that, but that would be my goal.
Okay. And that episode of Rugrats is one that I think a lot of people remember as well. That was definitely an episode that had an impact.
Yes.
It's
And
the only one that I do remember.
Yeah.
yeah.
That was the one we were nominated for an Emmy. And it's interesting because that was such a truthful, honest, loving episode. And that's, in a way, that kind of launched our career in a whole different direction.
I was just going to say, that episode really had an emotional impact on me as a kid when I watched it. And I didn't find out until years later that you and John Cooksey had a hand in it. And I was not surprised in the least by that because it just felt like something.
John Cooksey had no hand in the Jetsons, so don't drag him down in this.
Going on to the next question. This is from Jessica Pena. She asks, I'm curious about where the esoteric occult themes for the show stem from and what the process was for presenting this material to a young demographic. How did you maintain that balance of too scary and not scary enough? Was there a metric that was used? Did Disney?
Did she use the word metric?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's a Mensa attack. Well, first and foremost, think about where I came from. Think of my background. It's like, okay, let's have dinner and discuss the occult. It was just sort of a a permeation through my life, that strange and mysterious thing. You know, my father, he took me to a seance, but that one should not take teenagers to seances. Can I tell you, it doesn't work out well at all. But you know, it's like my father had pyramids in the living room, and he would have mediums. It was just so, the strange and mysterious certainly inculcated my life from the get-go. And John had certainly a very deep interest in it too. I know he shared. In terms of not frightening the masses, well, I don't think any of us had any interest in, as I mentioned, terror or anything like that. I think that what we did is far more subtle than that, far more subtle. And neither of us were interested in creating something absolutely horrific. And of course, you know, you can be assured if it became too horrific, then Disney would have, you know, thrown, you know, a couple of rocks at us. So there always were, you know, sets and limits to what you could do, etc. And neither of us were prone to doing anything utterly horrific, or, you know, I can't stand bloody, horrible, icky things. I cannot. I'm still not over The Shining. How many years has that been? When that damn elevator door opened, it's like, oh my God. So, from a person considering who my father is, I'm just a big baby. I say my dad, but then my dad would never have written animation. So what are you gonna say? I'm not sure if I could answer her question, except for the occult in the background came from both John's interests and my background, and certainly our reading and our knowledge of it. But I don't think either of us ever thought So Weird was of the occult at any time. It certainly was mysterious and interesting, but it was not occult based or, you know, Wickish based or whatever. And again, there are always checks and balances when you do a show, always.
Right.
Unless you are so unbelievably famous and rich like Spielberg, where you are your check and balance. Otherwise, there are people watching.
Okay, the next question is from Belinda Metz, who played Irene.
Belinda? She wants a question for me?
Yeah, she does. She wants to know.
Belinda, what do you want?
She wants to know.
A hard question.
I don't think so.
Right.
I think she expects a certain answer, though. She wants to know who you love to work with on the series.
Oh, that's not a loaded question, girlfriend. I guess the question, who did I not love working with? You know what? I thought all the regulars were wonderful. And, you know, Mac was intense and driven and funny, and Belinda was a hoot. We hired her for our other show too. She just is really so much fun, and she's just, you know, and so pretty, and I like her. You know, we're still friends. I like her a lot. And you know, if they get on your nerves, they're only there for one episode. So, you know, surely when you work on shows over years, absolutely, there are going to be times when there are individuals who don't jive with you, and vice versa. And any producer who ever said they loved every actor they work with is a big fat liar, because it's just not true. The things happen, and people can be mercurial. But overall, everybody was so weird. Was, you know, crew and cast. It was just a really cool experience. Really liked it. Okay, Belinda, but you were the best. I loved you best, better than anybody.
Dave on Instagram asks, did anything weird ever happen on set?
Every day. We were weird people doing a weird show. I guess the thing would be define weird.
Anything paranormal, I think they wanted.
Well, we were, oh my gosh, where did we shoot? You guys probably know better than I do. We shot at what used to be an asylum of sorts. Yeah, I bet my husband would know what it was. It was a really creepy place, to the point where, and the crew were kind of like burly guys, and nobody would go off by themselves. Everybody was very, very nervous at that one. And I'm trying to remember which one it was. It was the one, again, where you could see the special effect of the hands or the face against what looked like
Strange Geometry is that episode.
Yeah. Strange Geometry. Okay, so we shot it around there. That place had bad mojo.
No.
There were a lot of things that had happened there. It was like an insane asylum and they shut it down, but weird, bad. Like at night, it just gave me, and I'm not particularly prone to that, but it gave me the damn heebie-jeebies. It truly did. It was just like it was this really scary, threatening atmosphere. So other than that, I mean, as I mentioned, ghosties give me the heebies. So I tried to, avoid all ghost areas, but that place was scary.
Well, before we go on to the next question, I do want to say I researched this real quick. The Collector is streaming on Amazon Prime, but only in the UK. It does not seem to be
Which is
streaming.
why you must move.
It doesn't seem to be.
I actually have a VPN for that.
Well, there you go. But it doesn't seem to be streaming anywhere in the US
Well,
now.
That sucks. That was a great show. And if you know what, it's like an adult version of So Weird in a way. You guys would really like it. I really think you would.
You turned to thinking I'm in the UK at some point then.
Well, our next fan question comes from Cats and Books, and they want to know if you have a favorite song from the show.
You know, so many of the songs, the songs they did for the show were beautiful. But damned if I know the titles. Cooksey, of course, knows them. The Sirocco on the Waves, which one was that?
That's Rebecca.
That was beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. I think Mr. Cooksey missed his career calling as a songwriter. So talented, really talented. And when I met him, he used to play the piano. He would just sort of extemporaneously play the piano. I thought, ow, he's so talented.
And this is a question I think everybody we've interviewed on the show has been asked, but if So Weird was ever to be rebooted, would you be interested in participating in that?
Well, my question would be, rebooted as what?
Well, yeah, they don't say. I guess probably as a new television series. I don't know if they mean as a sequel or a brand new thing or what exactly.
Well, my feeling is that there are moments in time where shows are put together, like or movies or whatever, and everybody's of a certain age and everybody's there's a journey going on with the writers, with the actors, and I think So Weird was one of those moments. I think you could recreate, excuse my French, season 3 pretty darn easy with just grab whoever and do whatever and perky, but could we recreate the original So Weird easily? No, because we've been there, we've done that. It's there. You guys watch it and it's there. The sadness to me is we didn't finish it, but it's 3/4 there. And I can't imagine, people better than what Kara did, what Mac did, what Belinda did. They all did great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood recreates things all the time, but that doesn't make it better. It just makes it different.
Right. I think we, like many fans, have a fantasy, since so many things are getting rebooted, where the young actors are now adults and they're playing as moms and dads, if there's any way to continue that missing storyline. Which goes into the next question from Kelly and Autumn. They were saying, can I pitch a reboot where Jack is all grown up, who has a daughter who follows in her Aunt Fiona's footsteps? But on a serious note, if you were able to do this show today, would you do anything different?
Well, I'm not the person I was then, and neither is John. The show, like I said, it's an embodiment of who we were then and who they were then. Our journey, our interests, their wonderful acting. Again, people do part 3, part 4, part 5 of, shows, movies, whatever, all the time. But short of something like Alien Becomes Aliens, of which I'm a big fan, who would have thunk I loved Aliens? It's pretty hard to make, sequels as good as the original. The original stands on its own. Now, of course, if they offered me $1 million billion, then I throw all that right out the window. For $1 million billion, I'm in.
Okay. gosh, we're getting down to the last few questions. Mecha Electroma from Instagram asked, are there any supernatural elements you didn't use in the show you wish you could have worked in?
I have to say, considering what ILM can do, Industrial Light and Magic, now versus what we could do 20 years ago, my God, it would just be, that's the one thing that I would say, okay, if you redid So Weird now, you would have amazing special effects. You know, I would certainly say you've got to get that budget ratcheted up, because there is so many incredible things you can do. Whereas a lot of the stuff we did were practicum. You know, we had to practically hang the banshee just so, and she wasn't created from a little will o' the wisp, you know, off a machine. And we had a budget and we had a practicum, and that's what we did. You know, it's kind of like putting a show on in a barn, because we just didn't have the technology available. So yes, of course, you can see with all the shows at Netflix, which doesn't, excuse my French, necessarily make them a absolutely, you know, fabulous show. Just because you have all the bells and whistles doesn't mean you still got a good show. If anything, bells and whistles too often are used to cover the fact that you've got a shitty script, or you have no script, or what the hell. Hey, and again, I'm bringing up Troy. What the hell was that? It's, you know, it's a bad show when you're really looking at the horses. Going, God, horse. Wish I had that horse. So yeah, I wish you'd have the special effects that are available now. That would have been really incredible. But that being said, you know, during the practicum, we did a pretty darn good job overall. And we had some really great directors, just super, who would work with what we had, and they were great.
Okay.
And moving on to the last question, what are your thoughts on how So Weird still has many passionate fans who talk about the show? And is there anything you'd want to say to all those fans?
Well, like I said, when one does a show, you hope for the best, expect possibly the worst, and can only dream that what you have done will last, and it will resonate, it will matter to people. I am incredibly touched that you are all out there. You truly, I am, because it was a really incredible moment in our lives to be able to do that show. I am grateful that we were able to do it. And I'm incredibly grateful for all of its fans. I'm really very touched, because I know for myself as a writer, I work in a vacuum. And more often than not, I think, well, you know, Jetsons notwithstanding, I haven't done anything of value. And and I don't know if what I've done will matter or count, or, you know, people will remember it. But when I get the moments like people tell me they love Halloween Town, they love So Weird, it is such an amazing and wondrous moment, because we've absolutely put our heart into So Weird. That, you know, our lives were in there, and the actors busted their butt to make it beautiful and make it special and make it real and touching. And, you know, just so much wonderful work came out of that show, and I'm forever grateful that I got a chance to work on it. And I'm really so happy you guys are out there and you like it, because that's really, ultimately, we didn't do it for ourselves, although sometimes it felt like it. But you do something and you really hope somebody will like it, and when they do, it's just a really wonderful thing. And I'm very grateful for all of you. I obviously don't get a chance to meet you per se. People are not stopping me on the street and saying, God, that was fabulous. You know, I'm not an actress or anything like that, but trust me when I tell you that it means a lot to John and I that you love and care about the show as we did, truly.
Well,
yeah, thank you. I think many of us have talked about on all the previous episodes how an episode or a character or a story will touch us in so many different ways. And I think involving grief into a children's show is very impactful continuously in our lives as well. We're able to relate to Fee, or how Jack is kind of regulating his own emotions for his family. So thank you again for putting all your heart into writing this show, because it definitely...
Oh, you know, it is my honor to have been able to work on such a wonderful show. And I'm really so glad that I could just meet even a couple of you and talk to you and hear their questions. That's wonderful. I thank
Thank
you.
you.
We've loved having you on.
Oh, yeah, it's been so great talking to you, Allie Marie. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on. And
Absolutely. And I'm sorry it took so long. And next time I will have that Zoom up and running so beautifully. I hope you will all stay in touch and let me know how you're all doing, because again, it's just an honor to have such wonderful fans as you.
oh, well, thank you so much for saying that. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you too.
All right. Well, I guess that means that we have wrapped up. So this has been the So Weird podcast with special guest Allie Marie Matheson.
Goodbye to everybody. Thanks again.
You're very welcome. Some of her most notable credits include The Jetsons, Moonlighting.
Oh no.
Frets. What did I do wrong?
The Jetsons. Oh my God. I think that was my first credit. I'm sorry.
Should I start over, or do we just want to keep going?
That's funny. I'm sorry. That made me laugh.